Father, we just thank you so much for your goodness. You are a good, good Father. What a beautiful day it was today, Lord, in such a glorious place. And Father, we just desire this place to be a light on the hill, to be, well, a light on the hill. It just draws people in, Lord. I just pray, Lord, that you would open our ears tonight, that you would soften our hearts to hear your word, Lord, that we would be changed in some kind of way, Lord. We would be changed, and we can just go out into the world, Lord, and be Jesus to the world, to love as you taught us to love, Father. You sacrificed your life for this church, Lord. It belongs to you. So, Father, I just thank you, and just anoint Pastor tonight as he speaks. Are we done yet? Amen.
So if you want to, try to follow along, you can. We are going to look at Exodus. Exodus 15:22 through the end of Exodus chapter 16. So you're welcome to have that chapter open, and Exodus 15:22 through all of chapter 16. So that's when our story starts and stops tonight. So you're welcome to have those pages open, and make sure that what I am saying is what God says and not something different. Yeah. That's a good thing to do. So we're walking through Exodus, and last week we talked about the story of the Israelites being backed up against the Red Sea, the Egyptians coming with their army, and what in the world would they do? They crossed over. We know how that story ends, and so we take it from there with a bit of a journey from the Red Sea to the next point in the story. And it might have gone something like this. Well, that's not the way I thought it would start, but that's pretty good. That was like the fanfare. It's been 3 days since we crossed the Red Sea. What an amazing time. I mean, when we thought all was doomed, God delivered. When we thought that we were going to be destroyed, God delivered us. Who would have thought that we would walk through the Red Sea on dry ground with walls of water on either side? Who would have thought that was possible? That's probably the most amazing thing I have ever seen and ever experienced in my life. I just can't believe we did that, and that was only 3 days ago. Well, here we are 3 days later, and we're traveling through the desert. We're traveling the desert of Shur. It's in the Sinai Peninsula. It's between the two arms, the two fingers of the Red Sea, and in the Gulf of Suez and the Gulf of Agabar. And we're traveling in the desert along the coast. But as you might assume from traveling in a desert, there's not a lot of water. In fact, it's been 3 days since we have been able to have any water to drink. The water that's around us is salt water. Our jugs are almost empty. Every jar that we filled with water is almost gone. Every water bag that we had is almost depleted. 3 days. I don't know how much longer we can go on without water. And we need a lot of water. We're about 2 million people. And we have flocks and herds that need watering. And if you know anything about flocks and herds, you know that just about 3 days is about all they can go, and then they start dropping off. I mean, they start dying. And we don't have enough water for our livestock. We barely have enough water to keep our families. My children continually ask me for more water. They're always thirsty. I get that. I'm always thirsty. And they come and say, we need water, and we give them a sip of water, and we got to stop them. And they say, but I'm not done. I say, I know, but we have to save the water. They don't understand why we have to save water. They don't understand why they have to be thirsty. They don't understand it. How can I tell that to my children? Do you know what it's like to have your son or your daughter and they want water and you have very little to give them, and you know that maybe tomorrow you won't have anything to give them? That's where we're at. Why are we even here? Why are we walking in this desert? Where is Moses taking? Why are we going this way? And why don't we have water? I mean, what's wrong with Moses? You would think that the guy leading this whole thing would have it all figured out. That he would know where the water is. That he'd know where we're going to camp. Where's the water going to come from, Moses? We all began to ask him that question. We all began to say, Moses, now what? Where's the water from? Well, as I was thinking about that, deep in thought about how I would help my family, how I would keep them alive, my son came to me. I didn't really hear what he had to say. I was kind of deep in thought, and I heard the word water, and I thought, I got to tell him one more time that he can't have any water, and he's got to wait. But he said, no, Dad, we found water. We found water? Kids always know these things first. I don't know how they do that. We found water. We came to water. So I grabbed my water bag, and I was going to go and fill up my water bag with as much water as it could hold and bring it back to my family and let them all drink. And so I made my way to the shore of where the water was. And as I got there, all I heard was people yelling, Mara, Mara, Mara. It's not a name. Bitter. Bitter. The water was bitter water. Now that doesn't mean it was just tasted bad. That doesn't mean it just had some sort of stuff in it that wasn't the best crystal clear spring water that you've ever had from the mountains. No, it was more than just the taste. Bitter water was the kind of water that you can't drink. It was the kind of water that it would quench your thirst, but when it was in your stomach, it would give you cramps. And it would mess with your intestines, and it would give you all bad sorts of things. It was the kind of water that if your livestock drank, they would die. It was the kind of water that if you let your children drink the water, they would probably die. It was not good water, it was bitter water, it was bad water, it was deadly water. Why in the world have we come to bitter water? 3 days we've been wandering around, and I say we've been wandering around, I don't know where we're going. I sometimes wonder if Moses knows where we're going. Did Moses and Aaron even know? Have they ever been here before? Do they get that we're 2 million people and livestock innumerable to count? Do they understand that? Did they have a plan? Did they have a procedure? Do they have policies? Do they know how to do this kind of thing? What are we doing here anyway? I thought we were supposed to be going to a promised land, and all this is a dead land. There was supposed to be hope of good things, and all I have is hope of death. Why are we in this place? Why are we coming to bitter waters? And we all began to ask Moses, and more than ask, we all began to shout at Moses. What are you doing, Moses? Where's the water? How can we drink this? What's the deal? We're walking 3 days and all we have is this. What's your problem? And so I joined my voice into the thousands and hundred thousands of voices that were yelling at Moses, wondering how we were going to save our families, how we were going to save our livestock, how we weren't going to die right where we were. Moses turned and he started crying out, I guess you could say it was. And I wasn't close enough to hear what he was saying. But it was pretty clear that he wasn't saying anything to us. What he was crying out to, or who he was crying out to, was God. He wasn't really wanting us to hear his words. He was wanting God to hear his words. And I suspect he was asking God the same things. God, why are we here? Why is this water bitter? Why have you taken us this far just for us to die in the desert? I don't get it, God. What's the deal? And a little while after, he turned around back to us. And he didn't say anything. He just started walking. And we watched him as he walked. And we wondered what he was doing. What was his plan? How was he going to get around this? What would happen? And he walked down the shore of that great body of water for a while until he found this piece of wood, maybe a piece of driftwood. I don't know what it was. It was just a piece of wood there. And he picked up that piece of wood and he flung it into the water as far as he could. Okay, I get it. You're frustrated. Pick up something and throw it. I get it. I felt like throwing something too. But he threw that wood into the water and we thought, okay, that's all you got? That's all you're doing, Moses? Is he giving up on us? What's the deal? And then Moses turned to us and he said, here's why I threw that piece of wood in. He said, the water that's bitter is now good to drink. Because God told me to take this piece of wood and throw it in the water. And that was a symbol for what God was doing. He was going to make that water good. I don't know if I believed him. Okay, I didn't believe him at first. I thought, whatever, a piece of wood, you're going to throw a piece of driftwood in this great body of water and it's got magic powers or something? I don't think so. But Moses wanted us to know it was God who was doing this. It was God who led us here, and it was God who was going to make the water good. It had nothing to do with the piece of wood itself. It was just a symbol for us to see that piece of wood floating and know that God had done something. And I wasn't the first one to try the water, but there were others, and they tried the water. And they said, it's not bitter. It's good water. It's clean water. It's safe water. And we all rushed to that water and we filled up our jugs and we filled up our jars and we filled up our water bags and we filled up our stomachs and we filled up our families and we filled up our livestock with water. And everybody had enough water and more. God had healed the water. God had turned the bitterness into sweetness. God had saved us again. And it was interesting what Moses said next. After we had all taken our turn drinking and after our families were well, I guess you could say well-watered, Moses said, this is a symbol to you from God. God says that if you follow me, if we were to follow God, if we were to obey him, if we were to walk his ways and do what he asked us to do, he would be our healer. He would be the one that would keep the diseases away from us that he put upon Egypt. He said, I will be your God. If you follow me, I will be your God, and I will make sure none of the diseases I put on the Egyptians will ever fall upon you. But you got to follow me, and you got to obey me. We thought, well, okay, that's a good deal. We can do this. After that, we went to a place called Elim. Elim was a short journey away. Elim was an amazing place. Elim was a place that had 12 springs, one spring for every tribe. And we camped around those springs, and there were 70 palm trees. It was an oasis in the desert. Had no idea it was there, but God led us there. It was a place where we rested, a place where we refreshed, a place where we enjoyed life. And looking back, that was one of the best weeks of my life. Because it had only been about a week since we came out of Egypt. We went through the Red Sea. We got out of Egypt. The Egyptians were covered over by the Red Sea. We came through to this body of water that was useless to us, and God made it useful for us. And he brought us to this wonderful oasis with 12 springs. And we celebrated and enjoyed life with God. What an amazing week. But of course, we had to move on from there. We weren't where we were supposed to be. It was just a stop along the way. It wasn't where we were going to live forever. God had something better yet. And so we left Elim. And we left on the 15th day of the second month of the year. We came out of Egypt on the 14th day of the first month of the year. So it had been about a month since we had come out of Egypt. And we were heading across the desert, and we left the desert of Shur, and we went into the desert of Sin, and we were on our way to Mount Sinai, which was across the peninsula. Mount Sinai, by the way, was where Moses had first met God. Mount Sinai was the place where the bush was burning. Mount Sinai was the place where God told Moses to come back to Egypt and free the people of Israel and lead them. And so we were on our way to Mount Sinai to meet with God. But it was a desert. I don't have to remind you, it was a desert. We didn't have problems with water anymore. That wasn't the problem anymore. We had lots of water. We filled every container we had, and we came upon water along the way, and God provided that water. But we had a new problem. It was food. We'd been about a month out of Egypt, as I said, and we didn't have any bread. We didn't have vegetables. Oh, we had lots of meat. We had flocks and herds we could slaughter for meals, but at this rate, we wouldn't have any flocks or herds left. We were running out of food. We didn't really have anything to eat. What were we doing here? Why were we in this desert? It's hot, it's dusty, it's annoying. We don't have actual houses. We live in tents. We live in the back of our carts. We can't take showers. We don't dance in the rain because there is no rain. It's always dusty. It's always hot. It's always irritating. It's always annoying. And now we're hungry. You ever been hungry all the time? Every day you're hungry. You don't quite have enough to eat. You just never get enough to eat. You never feel full. You always are hungry. And you know the meal that you're having is running out and you might not have enough. And you want your kids to have enough, but you know you can't feed them fully. And you don't know how much should I give them and how much should I keep for myself, and should I just sacrifice myself and give it all to the kids? What do we do? I don't know. What was Moses doing? Didn't Moses think about this? Didn't he have this food thing figured out? I mean, he was leading us after all. He and Aaron. Well, what were they doing about our food shortage? Why weren't they stepping up to the plate? I mean, this was ridiculous. This is not the promised land. This is. We began to talk amongst each other. We began to plan and think, you know what? We were better off in Egypt. We were better off there because, at least in Egypt we had food to eat. We had lots of food to eat. We ate whatever we wanted to eat. And when we wanted to eat, we had pots of meat. Pots of meat. There was an abundance of meat. We could eat as much as we wanted. We'd sit around those pots and we'd eat meat. Yeah, sure, we would die in Egypt as slaves, but we're going to die here. It'd be better if we died back in Egypt. Why did we ever believe Moses? Why did we ever believe Aaron? Why did we ever think that they could speak for God and they were leading for God? Why did we ever choose to follow them? Why did we ever think that they knew who God was and they had and they would take care of us? Why? We must have got it wrong because this isn't right. This can't be God. I don't even, there's no use following these guys anymore. And we gathered around and we started planning. And we started thinking, let's go back to Egypt. Let's go back because it would have been better there. We had homes. We had water supply that was constant. We had a food supply that was constant. We could rest. We could get out of the sun. We had our daily lives. Sure, it wasn't great, but this isn't. And so we were complaining. And we were at Moses to say, now what are you going to do? Did you bring us here to die? Was that the plan? Did you really hear from God? Do you really know God? Do you really think that you're supposed to be the leader? I don't think so. I think we're done with you, Moses. Moses again turned away from us, and he again started crying out. It wasn't to us, and it wasn't for us. He was calling to God. Well, let's see what he's got. Let's see if God's actually going to answer him. And he called out to God for a while, and he came back to us, and he started telling us that God would provide for us. Sure, we've heard that before, but I don't see it. It's easy to say, but produce. How many days is he going to say, don't worry, God will provide? And how many days do I have to tell my children, sorry, you only get that little piece. But I'm hungry, Dad, I know. We'll find food for you later. How much longer do I have to string my kids along? How much longer do we have to walk through this? How many more times can I hear, don't worry, God will provide for you? When is he going to step up and do it? And we were complaining, and we were shouting at Moses, and just as we were doing that, the glory of God came down in a cloud. And when the glory of God came down in the cloud and we saw it, we knew we were wrong. We knew we were in trouble. We knew that our complaining was not good. We knew that our shouting against Moses was bad. And the glory of the Lord came down, and we knew that we better listen to what Moses had to say. And so Moses began to speak. And Moses told us tonight, this night, God will give you meat. And in the morning, and every morning we are in the desert, God will give you bread. How would he do that? He told us that tonight we would eat meat, we'd have a good dinner for our whole family, and in the morning we would have bread. And every single morning we followed God, we would have bread, and God would give it to us. That seems a little far-fetched to me. Where's it going to come from? How do you make bread without grain? I don't see any grain fields around here. There's no bread, bakery delivery stuff around here. I wasn't so sure, but I knew I wasn't going to go against God because I had seen his glory, and we just walked away. Some believing more than others. But that evening, the most amazing thing happened. All of a sudden, quail started flying in to the camp. All around us, thousands of them, hundreds of thousands of quail. I have no idea where they came from, and I've never seen that many quail in my life. But there they were. And they were easy. The kids would gather up the quail. And we had quail dinner that night. Everyone had their own quail. And we were full. And we were satisfied. And we couldn't believe what was happening. And so just maybe tomorrow morning we would have bread. We slept well that night. It's the first night in a while that none of us were hungry and our stomachs didn't remind us of it. We slept well, and when we woke up in the morning, there it was. Moses told us to get up early because God would provide bread from heaven, but we had to get up early because once the sun started shining, it would melt away. I've never heard of bread that melts. So we got up early before the sun shone. It was just coming up. And there on the ground, well, I don't know what it was. It was kind of like a breadish thing, but not bread, more like a wafer. More like not made from wheat, but made from coriander seed. And it was a flat, kind of thin stuff. And we all said, what is it? And so that's what we called it. We called it manna. Manna means, what is it? And so we gathered it. And Moses told us, gather only what you need for the day. Don't gather too much. Don't gather more than you're going to eat, because it's not going to last the night. If you keep it in your house overnight, thinking you're going to use it the next day, it's going to go bad and there's going to be maggots in it. It will rot. I've never heard of bread rotting, but this bread would rot. So my wife and I, we gathered, and the kids gathered, and they had so much fun gathering this manna. And we had enough for 2 million people. I mean, there was manna everywhere. And we gathered it up, and we put it in our cooking pots. We put it in any jar we could find, and we calculated about how much we thought we would eat for the day. And I wanted to take more, but my wife, who has more faith than me, said, no, remember what Moses said. I said, okay, I guess. And so that day, we had manna cakes. Ever had manna cakes? They're good. A little bit of sweet honey on them. Can't beat manna cakes. And we had manna cakes that morning. And we had manna for lunch. And we had it for dinner. We had all the food that we needed. Nobody was hungry that day. And we went to sleep wondering, is it going to be there in the morning? Does it really rot? Some of our neighbors gathered more, and they said, yeah, we're keeping it. We're going to keep it in this pot, and we're going to use it in the morning, because they weren't sure that this would happen twice. I mean, once is pretty spectacular, but twice it's got to be some sort of weird natural phenomenon that happened. So we got up early in the morning before the sun was up, and there it was, manna. And we gathered more manna. And we went over and asked our neighbors. And they opened up the pot, and it stank. The bread was rotten. And there were maggots crawling out of that pot, and they had to throw the pot away. There's a lot of people who did that. And Moses was angry. I mean, he just wasn't kind of miffed. He was angry. He was angry at them. And he said, did I not tell you? Did God not say, did I not be clear that God said, don't take more than you can use for the day? Was I not clear that God said, it's going to rot if you take more and you can't keep it overnight? Why did you disobey God? Why did you go against Him? Why are you not believing God? Are you still so dull that you don't believe Him? And he was angry, and rightfully so. But every day that week, we got up early and there was the manna. It got to be a fun thing for the kids. They would see who could fill their jar first. Now we had to slow them down a little bit because we didn't want any rotten manna. Everything we took, we made sure we ate. There was no leftovers. There was no, I don't feel like eating, I'm just going to go play. No, you finish your meal. Moms are like that. Sorry, moms. It's Mother's Day tomorrow, or the day after. Oops. It came to the Sabbath. It was the day before the Sabbath. And Moses had told us that on the Sabbath day, there's not going to be any manna. On the Sabbath day, God is not going to provide bread from heaven. But He's going to provide as much as you need on the day before the Sabbath. So the day before the Sabbath, take twice as much as you'd usually take. Gather up enough for 2 days. To me, that posed a bit of a problem. Because I had seen that stuff rot. I'd seen the maggots. I'd smelled it. I did not want to have rotten manna in my house. I know that normally we're only supposed to take enough for the day, and now I'm taking enough for 2 days. Are you sure about that? Did you get that instruction right, Moses? Because I don't know that I want that in my house, especially with the kids running around. You know how kids get into stuff. So do we take enough for 2 days? Do we not? And how do I know that it's not going to be there on the Sabbath? I mean, maybe it would. It's every day so far. Maybe Moses got that wrong. Maybe it would be there. So some of our neighbors gathered just enough for 1 day because they figured, it'll be there. It's been there for 5, 6 days in a row. It'll be there. I didn't really want to gather enough for 2 days. I just as soon go without on the Sabbath. I'd known hunger. We'd known hunger before. I could deal with that for a day. But my wife said, you don't need to be hungry. God said take enough for 2 days, so why wouldn't you? I didn't want to say out loud because I didn't really believe him. That's not something you say out loud. So we gathered enough for 2 days. And we ate. And we ate well. And in fact, I have to tell you, I ate more than I should have because I wasn't quite sure that it was going to still be good the next day. So I filled up. We didn't sleep that well I didn't sleep that well last night. The kids always slept well. Because I was wondering, is that stuff molding? Is that stuff rotting? Are there maggots in that jar? Is there going to be manna in the morning? How am I going to deal with all that? So we got up early in the morning. And the whole family got up because they were all excited. The kids especially. Let's check this out, Dad. Let's see. Is God right? Let's check it out. And so we slowly opened the lid on the jar. It smells okay. We looked in. Looks okay. Dumped some out. It was good. It was not rotted. It was as fresh as it was the morning we picked it. I guess God was right. I guess Moses was right. Some of our neighbors, they didn't eat that day because they didn't believe, and many of them were out looking for the manna that morning. And Moses was angry again. Moses was angry again. Not like I said, not just a little bit tad upset, but he was angry. Again, he said, why are you here? Why are you out this morning looking for manna? Didn't I tell you there would not be any manna on the Sabbath? Did I not tell you that God told you to pick enough for the 2 days the day before? So why are you here? Why is it that you're choosing not to believe God? Why is it that you're choosing not to believe what I tell you? Why is it that you are making a choice against God? How does that make sense? Tell me. Did not God say, if you follow me, and if you obey me, I will do these things for you, and I will make sure you remain healthy, and I will provide for you? Did he not say that? Then why are you here? You're not following God doing this. You're not believing God doing what you're doing. Do you realize that if you don't follow God, he won't provide this? Do you realize if you don't follow God, you're not under his care? Do you realize what you're doing by not following God? There was no answer to that. Because what could you say? He was right. He was angry, not because we weren't following him. Don't misunderstand that. We had grumbled against Moses, and we complained against Moses, and we plotted to get rid of Moses, and we didn't want to follow Moses anymore. But Moses wasn't angry about that. Moses was angry because we weren't following God. Because Moses said, who am I after all? I'm just a man. I'm not making this up. I'm not providing. I'm just doing what God asks me to do. I'm just telling you what God tells me. So why are you complaining against me? I'm just a man. Who you're really complaining against is God. Who you're really not following is God. Who you're really against is God. And do you really want to be against God? It's God who brought you out of Egypt. It's God who parted the sea. It's God who poured over the sea over the Egyptians. It was God who turned the bitter into good water. It was God who came down in his glory. It was God who brought you here and gave you the quail. It's God who gives you the manna. So why are you not following? Why are you not believing? Why are you not trusting? Why are you making a choice to go against God. We were not only traveling with God, but in many ways we were on trial with God. Aren't we kind of all that way? We're not just traveling with God, but we're kind of on trial with God, because God continually says, come and follow me. Come and trust me. I have given you promises. Do you believe me? I will provide for you. Do you believe me? And every day we're faced with choices. Will I follow God? Will I choose to believe God? Will I choose to trust God? Or will I choose to trust in myself over God? Will I say, I don't know that God knows what he's talking about, but I'm sure I do. So I'm going to follow this guy. I'm going to follow me. Moses was angry because he knew what we were doing. We were walking away from God. And he knew the consequences of that. You and I have a choice to make. Will we follow God? Will we trust God? Will we believe his promises to us? Or will we believe in ourselves? And say, no, God, I've got it. No, God, you don't know I do. We were learning, as I'm sure you're learning, how to trust God, how to follow God. And what we were discovering is that when we follow God, that when we obey God, that when we walk with him and travel with him in this life and trust him, he always, every time, proves himself to be trustworthy. Proves himself to be God for us. How's your journey? How are your travels? What are you doing in your trials? Let me just close in prayer. God, you know that we are no different than the Israelites way back then. You know, God, of our propensity, our almost willingness to not follow you because we like our ideas more than yours. God, help us to journey with you, following you in obedience with you. God, you know that we tend and are prone to complaining and arguing and not believing you. So God, change that in us. As we travel with you, Jesus, I pray that in every trial that you bring us to, you would teach us to trust you, to believe you, to take your words with faith and know that you're God for us. So Jesus, whatever it is this day, tomorrow, the next day, as we travel with you, Jesus, help us to choose to trust and to believe. Build and strengthen and give us faith, Jesus. And help our eyes to be opened to watch how you are incredibly and indeed for us. I ask this and I pray it in your name, Jesus. Amen.